He didn't just see data, he saw relationships. Jody Glidden is the founder and CEO of IntroHive, the platform redefining how companies understand, grow, and protect their most valuable asset, relationships.
My plan was I was going to be in business one way or another, and I just found it more fun. What I've learned through my life is I've gotten acquired a lot of different times. It's hard for me to execute other people's decisions. I'm worried that their decision is right. It bothers me a lot.
From startup grind to global enterprise adoption, Jody built technology that turns human connection into measurable advantage.
And you say, hey, I'm just going to start a company, or did you go work now first?
I did 1 year of computer science and then quit. And joining somebody, I was the first technical person.
He's a builder, a systems thinker, and a leader obsessed with clarity in a noisy world of information.
What do you think changes over the next 12, 16, 24 months?
I think all of the commodity type software is going to get either, like you said, vibe coded in-house, but I think what's going to be probably more likely is better, cheaper versions are going to just get created, commercialized, like the 80/90 approach, right? That's inevitable because somebody can come in, instead of like $150 a seat for what's essentially a database, they can come in and sell something for $10 or $20.
This is Jody Glidden. Jody, thank you so much for joining me on Pareja Unfiltered. I like to tell entrepreneurial stories. And most people see finished products. You're a 5-time exited founder with some very big numbers. But most people don't understand that that's, you're 10, you're 15, you're 20.
Yeah.
So let's just start at the beginning at whichever part you want to take us. Like, when did you get that entrepreneurial itch where you decided you were going to start building businesses versus work for someone?
Mm-hmm.
And then wherever the conversation goes.
Thanks for having me. I guess really it started back with when I was leaving high school and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I just happened to have been born at the right place at the right time where I was considering kind of any business options. Both my parents were independent business people. And so I was deciding on different options, but then I realized all of a sudden, well, wait a second, tech companies are actually making money, or at least they were making,
What year was this? Because you said something that I've learned to like.
Yeah.
Which is the Malcolm Gladwell Outlier kind of thesis, right?
Yeah.
And I remember reading that book for the first time and actually being mad. I was in my mid-20s. I was pretty successful at the thing I was doing. And I read the book and I felt like it stole my achievements because it kind of boiled me down to being born at the right time, at the right place, picking the right industry, and getting skillful at something. And then something external happened, which I felt kind of robbed me of what I had accomplished. But once I kind of internalized it, and my favorite analogy, and you're Canadian, was 90% of Canadian hockey players were born between January 1st and March 31st.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden you realize that like right place, right time has a lot more to do with it than we like to admit.
And it doesn't mean, I don't think, that you wouldn't have been successful in business in a different field. I think my plan was I was going to be in business one way or another.
As your parents.
Yeah, exactly. And I just found it more fun. Typically, what I've learned through my life is I've gotten acquired a lot of different times, right? And post-acquisition, it's fun for a while. And then I find myself like clashing when I can't make the decisions. There's something, it's hard for me to execute other people's decisions because if I really want to win, and if I'm worried that their decision isn't right, it bothers me a lot.
Well, so before we get there, walk me through that moment. You said high school. What year was that?
1991 is when I graduated.
So you were pre-bubble and had the fun part of the run-up. So walk me through that. So you're graduating high school and you say, hey, I'm just going to start a company, or did you go work somewhere first?
No, I did 1 year of computer science and then quit and then ended up joining somebody. I heard about somebody that was just starting with a company called scholars.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so
were you employee number 2?
No, it was maybe employee number 5 or 6.
Okay.
But I was the first technical person, and it was a tech startup. So I got, I ended up building coming up with the idea for the product and building the product and overseeing, basically all things product and engineering and support and all the rest. So I had, of the 90 some people we had at acquisition, I had 80 something under me.
And did you end up with equity, or were you an employee in that experience?
We sold the company for $1 million. So we didn't, it was it wasn't worth much of anything, really. But at the time, when you're 19 years old or something like that, it just seemed like, wow, this is amazing. And I was from a little fishing village. So I just thought it seemed like a lot of money. And, but looking back now, we had a few $100,000 in revenue. We were growing like this. Uh, Never should have sold that company.
I mean, the URL is probably more valuable than what you got for it.
For sure. We didn't know anything about multiples or, the multiples of revenue instead of multiples of earnings and all these sorts of things. It took a lot longer before a lot of that stuff really developed in the late 90s where people knew how to value tech companies and all that.
So walk me through when you were employee number 5 to when you exited 96 employees. How long did that take?
That we exited, I think, around maybe it was 1995, something like that.
So still rather quickly. It was a couple years.
Yeah. That was quick. And then, but that's where I learned to sell enterprise because I was also one of the main people in every major sales cycle. They would have me in it, just because we were kind of introducing new technologies, and I was kind of like the visionary behind the product. So it made sense to bring me into the meeting, And then I learned, like, kind of watched the process and learned a lot about what was happening and started reading sales books and things like that.
And so your first acquisition happens. Then what? You stay at the company for a couple years?
Yeah, I had no intention of leaving. I was like, okay, this is great. Surely this 3,000 person company that adopted us is going to take this like 19, 20-year-old and I'll be on the executive team and I'll teach them all, I didn't realize what I didn't know back then. I thought I knew everything because I was a kid and most kids think that, Um, and then I would get frustrated because I'd get invited to these meetings and they'd be like, they weren't thinking of me the way I was thinking of me. So it didn't take very long before I pitched them an idea on, at that company, we kind of invented what's now called the learning management system space. I pitched them on the idea, since you guys are the world leaders in e-learning for corporations, you should have a multilingual version of what you're doing that works in multiple currencies and all those sorts of things. They disagreed because they were super dominant. And so they said, why would we bother spending the money on that when we really don't have any major competitors? So I quit and became their competitor. So I built that system, sold it. First customer was Merrill Lynch. And it just grew and grew. We sold AT&T, a bunch of big brands in a really short period of time. Then their head of international sales, the guy that was selling everything outside of the US, he said, could I resell your platform? And so the company that had previously acquired us all of a sudden became our biggest reseller. And so we did that for, I don't know, ran that company maybe 3 years. And then
From start to finish?
yeah, and then they came back and tried to buy me again. And so I ended up selling again.
To the same buyer?
Yeah, to the same buyer. Yeah. This one was closer to 10 million, but still, again, never should have sold. But I grew up so poor that these numbers just seemed like amazing to me back then,
Do they still own those platforms and operate them?
Yeah, I mean, they're still the leader. They're still the world leader. They've rolled up everybody that private equity came in. I think Vista eventually came in, basically bought up everybody that was in that space and rolled them all up. And I mean, it would be a 30-year-old platform at this point, probably 25 or 30 years, but I'm sure it's based on all those same principles. We kind of invented a lot of the things that are in every enterprise learning management system now.
And so the second time around, how long did they keep you before you got the itch again?
It was probably about a year.
Did they
And
treat you differently the second time around?
not really. No, not really. I think I had this, every time I got acquired, I went in with plans. I was like, here's all these great things that we can do. But if your vision doesn't match up with their vision, it, I think what I've learned is you have to have those conversations earlier on. Because when you come in, they already have their own plans and your plans might not match up with theirs, which is totally fine.
Especially if they're partying with money.
But they always want to try to find a way to retain you. And for me, it's not really so much retaining me with money. A lot of it is I want to work on stuff that I love. So if what their opinion on the future is different than mine, then probably it's not going to work out in the long run.
So second time around, you stay a year. What
Yeah.
drove you to, did you want to go compete with them again? What was the catalyst to leave the second time?
No, it was more just that I had enough money at this point, and I just felt like I don't think I want to be here anymore. Felt like I was I could do something bigger, and I was working on I had a new idea. So berries were just becoming a thing. And I was noticing like every major business person was talking about them or buying one. And I thought there was no way for them to get their mail onto the device. They had to use a BlackBerry.net email address back then. And I thought, well, what if I built like a relay that would relay people's email onto the BlackBerry devices? So I got working on this kind of as like a one-person project for a while. About a year into this, I go to pitch.
Were you still working at the other place?
No, I
You
no, I
were
quit.
you were moonlighting doing it. You were just
No, I quit. Yeah, I just quit. And so I was sort of like part-time working on it and part-time just enjoying like some free time. And
Were you still in Canada, or you moved to San Francisco at this point?
no, I left San Francisco at this point. And I was doing it out of Canada. And then I ended up worked on this thing for a year, and I just went and pitched it to the right person. It took me a while to navigate to the right person at BlackBerry, and then I found out they were imminently about to release the exact same thing. So it was a waste of time, but it was the right idea. Just
What was the lesson learned there?
I think probably, it's very commonly known now. Reid Hoffman always says, "You'll get your product in market." So I think that's the key is like you have to get in there earlier. Don't go building for a year, trying to build the perfect product, and then you find out in the end that there was no need, right? So I thought for sure there would be a need. I just didn't expect that it would be given away for free by the vendor. There's no way to compete with that.
And so, what was there a disillusion moment? Did you take some time? How did you decide to go into the
Yeah. Well, then I was like, so then I just started to think about what I used to keep like a book of all these different ideas. And so I'd be going to sleep and your mind is racing. I'm sure you've done this. Right. And I'd think, oh, that'd be a great thing to work on. But I had no end of like these things in my book, right? And not enough time to work on them all. So, but I sort of had another, the .com crash had happened at this point. And I'm like, is now even the right time to start a company? I don't know. I'm just going to take some time. So I went back, did finished off my degree. Um, and then I started Chalk Media, which was basically, again, it was targeted at the BlackBerries, like the world's only mobile device at the time. And we had there was a problem where I had a lot of these large enterprise sales teams that I knew from the past from selling to them. And they would release a product and then they'd frantically go try to train all the sales reps. And, I came from a training background with my previous startup. So I thought, maybe we could solve this with mobile devices. They didn't want to send the training materials out in advance because there'd be leaks about some product that was the world wasn't supposed to know about yet. So I
That's a
thought,
catch-22.
yeah. So I thought, well, what if we could like trickle the content out into their device without people even knowing? Because there was a bandwidth issue at that point too. So what if we could trickle the content out to their device, and then 9 a.m. When somebody's on stage and they're announcing this to the world, boom, it like appears, kind of like Snapchat, like it appears, you can watch it once and it disappears. So ephemeral content, basically, meant for announcements or training or things like that. We called it pushcast instead of podcast.
Interesting. And so that turned into the third business?
Yeah, we grew pretty well. We ended up taking it public on the Canadian stock exchange, the TSX, and yeah, I guess grew that company pretty well until we had like Samsung and AT&T and Verizon and BlackBerry and all sorts of these consumer electronics companies. Especially, we were very heavy in those kinds of companies because they release products and they want to keep them a secret. And then we went to do a financing. So public companies still, as you know, do financings as you run one. But we did a public company financing, and we were like, yeah, let's not do it now. This was like May of 2008. I'm sure you can figure out how the story ends. And we were like, the stockbrokers always say, sell in May, go away. So we were like, why don't we raise in September? And turned out that was not great timing. So in September, when we went out to market, boom, the whole stock market crashed. That was the great financial crisis. And so we got an offer, like we got partway up to our goal. But during the process of going to some strategics for investment, BlackBerry said they wanted to acquire us. And so we thought, well, I don't really know how long this whole issue is going to last. Like, how bad is this problem really going to be? Maybe we should take the offer. So we did, and it was a good deal. And then we went and worked with BlackBerry. I stayed there for a year or so, maybe a year and a half. Got a chance I was reported to Jim Balsilie. He was kind of a childhood hero of mine because I grew up in Canada.
And I just watched the documentary on that, or a movie, and it was fascinating.
Yeah, I learned a lot from his style. He's much more aggressive and more, he has a different way of motivating people than me. But he's definitely like a very hard driving, goal setting, won't take no for an answer. He will achieve at any cost. So I really liked that. I really liked working there for a while. And then eventually, though, the iPhone came out. I was like, this isn't the right place to be right now. So then I had formed some really great relationships with the big four. EY, PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, these sorts of people. And they have massive numbers of employees. Like one of those firms will have 500,000 employees. Half of those people would be considered sales, and in the conversations, I uncovered a need that didn't exist in the market, which was they didn't know they had the best network in the world, but they didn't know who knew who. And so I thought, well, so they would send these company-wide emails where they'd say, hey, does anybody know anybody on the board of Pepsi? Or does anybody know, the chief marketing officer at this place? And they'd get direct introductions, but they'd have to do like these, all hands, 500,000 person emails.
Wow.
And I thought, well, there's a much easier way to do this. I just have to mine through all the emails that get sent and received and calendar invites and all these sorts of things. And I can like derive a relationship graph that is much more, has way much more content than, say, LinkedIn, way more accurate, and we can actually calculate the relationship strength of every person to every person. So I pitched the idea to PwC, and they're like, great, yeah, well, if you build it, we will come, sort of thing. So we sold it. We built that, and we sold it to PwC Canada, 100 seats first, then 1,000 seats, and 10,000 seats, and we sold a bunch more companies, and then eventually got to 93 countries at PwC, and 100 and some thousand users just at PwC alone. And the company grew, we were 400 and some employees by the time I left, just about $500 million. And then private equity came in. Well, first Elliott Management came in, and we were very nervous because, they have a reputation of being very sharp, and couldn't have been nicer guys to work with. They were really great. Then we had another private equity firm come in, and that just didn't go as well. So we had differing opinions.
And then?
So then I left about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I still own a big piece of that company, but I decided it was time to start something else because I didn't want to execute someone else's orders. I wanted to, again, I don't want to be responsible for someone else's decisions in case they're wrong. And so I started this company called Postalize, which is, we started it in one direction. I had a non-compete. And so we started with, well, let's help companies automate a bunch of the business development that they do around social media. So automating like how people get customers via LinkedIn, and all sorts of outreach and things like that. And then when the non-compete was up, we actually kind of worked on a new version of what a lot of my old IntroHive customers probably would have loved, is what we thought. So we've called it, so the first IntroHive, we called it ERM, Enterprise Relationship Management. And it's sort of like the CRM, that inputs its own data. Then we were calling this PRM, proactive relationship management, because it actually will do the actions for you. It will like notice things in the data. It will, notice that it's been too long since you spoke to somebody, and it will draft the email. It'll notice like that somebody posted on, LinkedIn, and it will draft up, notify you that you should be responding and engaging. It kind of like covers all the business development things or sales things that
Does it do comments on Facebook and Instagram?
not Facebook and Instagram. We're really just focused on, we went really deep. I've always done this, went very, very deep in a vertical. Because I think until you've raised, big amounts of money, 30, 40, $50 million, it's kind of dangerous to go too broad, because then you can have a great idea, attract competitors that are better funded than you, and then, you're kind of marginalized pretty quickly. So I've went at it a little different way. I think it's a way that seems to be successful pretty much every time. Every company I've done has been bigger than the next. And the failure rate is pretty much zero. But I think the way that I've done that is go very deep in a vertical and then expand verticals.
And you started this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I've started and scaled and exited software business, and I did it in probably the hardest era. I did it in 2015 to 2020.
Oh yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
And I found myself paying 23-year-olds with a very junior CS degree, almost $200,000, providing catered lunches,
Yeah.
kombucha on tap, because I had to compete with Google and Microsoft.
Right.
About 12 months ago, with the release of ChatGPT, shortly thereafter came vibe coding. And currently today, I still have a very large engineering org. We build a lot of things that only we will consume. And so I think enterprises should eat their own dog food when there's no, off-the-shelf product.
Right.
And I used to very publicly say that's the only time you should do it, right? That if there's a specialist enterprise technology that's deployed hundreds of millions of dollars in OpEx,
Yeah.
why would you even attempt to do it?
Mm-hmm.
But even in the last 12 months, as vibe coding came out, my favorite part was the long tail. And
Yeah.
if you take a roadmap and see what's never going to get built.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's like basic visualizations on proprietary data.
Yeah.
And I can do it by myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not technical.
Right.
But, almost every 90 days, the models get substantially better, right? Like Lovable 9 months ago is completely different than Lovable today. And, Sonnet 4.5 and Codex and Ripple, so many of them, right?
Right.
How has your process shifted in both how you create software and also how do you feel not to be disrupted by two kids in a basement?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that going deep in a vertical is again kind of makes you somewhat bulletproof, because first of all, we vibe code too, but we have 25 people at the moment. Last time I had 150 people at the moment. So we're building one. I will not be involved in a startup or an engineering organization where we aren't producing new software at an incredible pace. There's no point. It's boring. Also, your chances of losing are pretty high. So, everybody that works at my companies always knows it's a high pressure environment. We're going to produce a lot of things, but it's going to be really fun. We're going to win. We're going to be doing incredible things. We're going to invent every day. And so if you're one of those companies that's just going to have a CRM copy from something that somebody created 10 years ago, it's like, yeah, your chances of being disrupted are really high. Look at 80/90, right? But I think if you're going really deep into a vertical, you're building really, really fast. People who think that they can do what we do, the other thing is every company I've started, I attract more and more talented people because they always want to be in a winning company, right? And so my 25 people are probably like 50 people that you would normally find. So it's really, really difficult for it to make sense, as long as we're going deep.
Going back to the same thought or thread, how do you think vibe coding specifically, because I think AI is such a hot topic, if you will, but it's kind of like just a catchphrase,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
There's a large language model,
Right.
which is great. It's just better search, right?
Yeah.
It's more of a, bouncing ideas off of someone.
AI assisted coding, like, because it does create like a lot of the, let's say 90% of the way, using the actual code generation itself. The problem is, you know, you'd want to make sure that you're properly architecting things, that everything's tying together, that you're not creating duplicate methods and all these sorts of more technical things that, a lot of the business audience might care less about that are listening. But yeah, there's a whole lot of things that if you try to build a big product, right? A multi-year, many people product, you're going to have all sorts of duplicate code and all sorts of scale issues and things like that. If you're trying to serve 500,000 to 1 million people with something like that,
And so what do you think changes over the next 12, 16, 24 months?
I think all of the commodity type software is going to get either like you said, vibe coded in-house, but I think what's going to be probably more likely is better, cheaper versions are going to just get created, commercialized, like the 80/90 approach, right? That's inevitable because somebody can come in instead of like $150 a seat for what's essentially a database. They can come in and sell something for $10 or $20.
That's an interesting take. So I've said a couple times in the last 6 months from stage.
Yeah.
I think in 36 months, most companies won't have B2B SaaS products that are a simple visualization or database of my proprietary data.
Right.
Right. So think of like, to pick on brands like just like Tableau, right? Like
Right.
you are showing me my own stuff.
That's right.
Right. And, as a fun exercise, I was having a discussion with ChatGPT and gave it products that I pay for.
Yeah.
And had it rank it like
Had to-
1 out of 10, and Tableau was number 1.
Yeah.
Number, I won't pick on one, but a messaging app was like number 3.
Yeah.
But like a 10 out of 10 in difficulty was ERP.
Yeah.
Right. Like an Oracle.
Yeah. They're
Right.
deep.
Multi-country tax variations with, tax codes.
That's right.
But I hadn't thought about it that way, where like me coding it might not be possible towards like 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that a competitor doesn't pop up.
Yeah.
Like if you decided to go do ERP today,
Right.
2 years ago, you'd be like, no way, I'm not taking on Oracle. But with the speed and, reduced cost, maybe it attracts talent to go do that.
Yeah. Like one of the issues that we had at my previous company is when you have to go ask 500,000 users if it's okay to add a new feature because you don't want to disrupt them, that slows you down. And when you have to go to committee, to make these sorts of decisions, it slows you down. So you can have somebody come in with a fresh start and they can outwork you. The other thing is like once a company gets to a certain size, it's really hard to keep that culture of like, hey guys, we're going to work the weekend because we're going to deliver this new thing. They can't do those same sorts of things. There's no incentive. People don't feel like they're making an impact. I don't know, like, I probably shouldn't name a company name, but think of a big enterprise software company. And when's the last time they created a new feature that you can even remember? Like, I'm sure they have, but not one that's meaningful, not where people are like, wow, that's amazing, right? But we're, the smaller companies are creating amazing things and they're getting wows in the sales meetings every day. It's just a way more fun place to work.
And if you could talk to a young engineer, where do you think the exciting parts are? Right. And it's interesting because I think we almost live in a tale of two cities, both in the economy as consumers,
Yeah.
owners, but even employees and job applicants. Right. I read of folks who have, especially in engineering, I'm specifically talking to engineers right now, who have been looking for 6, 12 months, and they came from Google or Microsoft or the larger shops, who probably haven't either been part of a startup or attempted one. I also talked to some folks who said this is the most fun and best time to be an engineer. So tell me about that kind of dichotomy we're seeing play out on LinkedIn, if you will.
Well, I think, if I were advising my daughter, for example, right? You want stability and you want fun. Nobody wants to be dreading going to work. And so for me, I had the illusion I think we all have the illusion that in big companies, your job is secure, and in small companies, your job is not secure. But what we're seeing now is the big tech companies, like they're laying off 5%, 5%, 5%. It's a death by 1,000 cuts, and it's happening all the time. You feel like you're it's stable because there's still 100,000 people there. But I think in small companies you have a bit of a dichotomy, right? You have the ones that are small and fun and very unstable, and then you have the
Ping pong is the beanbag, and
yeah, but they can't keep themselves funded. There's like no line of sight to customers. Um, that's not a great, you still don't have stability. But then there's other ones that are like clearly they're Series A stage. Everything is heading in the right direction. Most people don't even ask those questions. When in a job interview, you tend to not ask like, what stage are you at? How have things been trending? What's your year over year? Things like that. That if we were investing, we would ask those questions because we want to know if they're going to be around. We don't really ask those questions if we're going to stake our career on it. We probably should.
post exit, have you invested in other people's businesses?
Yeah, yeah. I've done a fair number of like seed stage investing. Now I'm going to start doing some bigger checks, but in more like Series D, Series E type companies. But I had some good outcomes. Like there was one that I'm trying to remember what their valuation was. Maybe it was like 10 million, and they're going public. So I've had like a couple of these, like probably 100, 200x kind of investments out of.
And what was the commonality in those founders? Or was it the business product market fit? What was your thesis that's played out well a couple times?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always look at other people's businesses the way I look at my own ideas. What's their ability to keep ahead of the competition? In terms of like, sometimes it's not typically a technology thing, but sometimes it's a network effect, or sometimes it's like the team is just unusually experienced or smart or driven. But you want to make sure that you feel like they can keep ahead of the competition somehow. You want to make sure that the market size is massive. Just in conversations with them, I always try to find out, like, do they have an understand? Like, sometimes you meet founders who are absolutely in love with their idea. And I don't know if I've ever had an idea where it turned out exactly the way I expected in the end. I don't think ever.
Pivot is mandatory.
It's mandatory, right? So when somebody is too in love with their idea and they don't understand that, it worries me, and I don't think it's a good idea to invest. So there's a bunch of things like that. I probably should formalize my investment criteria at some point.
Is there anything that pops into your head of where it didn't work out, and do you see some commonalities?
I mean, one of them had so much potential. They were growing so well. It was a conference call company called Speak. And it was like, getting rid of the pin, like all of that, which eventually happened, but they were the leader in it and they were first.
I
And it was
remember one called Loop Up. There was a couple that jumped into that space around the same time.
Yeah, this was early, and they were started by the founders of Evite, so they knew how to build a business, and it was growing really well. But it was two founders equal, and the two founders got in a big fight, and that's when I started realizing, be careful of two founders with equal equity, because that can be a problem. And
Yeah, you need a tiebreaker.
Yeah, you need a tiebreaker. So that's a problem. It's just something I worry about. I think there's been other ones where I kind of knew, like, I invested because somebody else was investing, that I really respected, and really didn't do my homework the way I should have. So that's probably on 2 occasions that's happened. The ones where I kind of picked it all, other than Speak, when I picked the way that I would normally pick, and I didn't let outside people influence me, those pretty much all won.
So I've talked to several exited founders who, didn't have the next idea like you had,
Yeah.
and said, okay, I'm setting up a family office. I'm going to start writing checks.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard this story 4 or 5 times where they wrote checks for a year.
Yeah.
They all went to zero
Yeah.
and said, I'm just going to go be an operator. Right. So you're unique in the sense that you've actually been able to, what's the distinction there? Because I think I hear the opposite more, where it's like,
Yeah.
wrote a bunch of checks, can't pick a winner. I know how to operate.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just going to go back, and they went 0 to 1 again, and it worked.
Yeah.
But it's because if we're betting on the jockey, it's hard to pick jockeys.
Yeah. I don't know if it is. Like, I think that there's some people you just know they're gonna, fairly early on. I'd say within a year. I don't know if I'd invest earlier than a year, but say at the 1 year mark, I'd have a pretty good idea whether they're gonna make it, I think. And then I've helped them. I've like one of the companies, they were trying to get into credit card processing for large retail, and I knew the person that did that whole piece, formed all the retail relationships for BlackBerry. So I was like, I'll invest, but only if get this guy involved. And so they did, and I mean, that's the one that's going public. So sometimes I can connect dots for people, and I know that maybe it's worth 10 million now, but if we do this, I can like increase what the valuation would be right now.
So you're one of your angles is to actually asymmetrically help move the needle.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been cases where I won't invest on standard terms. I've said like, um, here are the 3 things I'm gonna do. Um, and if you want my check, I think your chances are low right now, but I think if we can do these 3 things, I think it's gonna greatly improve the chances, and then I'd be happy to invest. So I'll put half in now, and I'll put the other half in, give me an option for, 6 months, something like that. And so they've done that, and then I exercise my option. I don't think there's been a case when I didn't exercise my option, but at least I know that I'm only out half, if they, because I did have one where the guy just would not take my advice after he wrote the check, and then he ended up driving it into the ground. Not that my advice is perfect, but like I could see it was clearly a problem. The way he was heading down, it was like kind of obvious to me and some of the other investors. He was a first timer, and he was one of those people that didn't know what he didn't know, and you just could not tell him.
And having been on the other side of I didn't know, I've been that first timer. And it, whether I'm the one being interviewed or I'm doing solo content, like there's just so much parts of this journey that I don't think you can read
Yeah.
or learn. Is there any advice to that first timer who didn't know what he didn't know?
I mean, I think you have to, it's a weird balance that you have to have in order to be really successful at this, I think. One is you have to have an irrational confidence in yourself, like that, I mean, there's no way I'm going to fail, right? You have to believe that whether it's true or not. You just have to believe it. And I always had that. And most successful founders that I know, they had that.
I
But
call it a healthy sense of delusion.
yes, you have to be delusional. But the thing that has to be coupled with that, I think, is you also have to have a thirst for learning. Like that your way to get there isn't because you know everything necessarily. It's that you will find a way. And so I just like was gobbling up books and like asking people's opinions and trying to hire the smartest people I could find. Um, you know, I think great founders spend a good portion of their time recruiting. So I think those 2 things have to go together. That you're sure you're going to make it, but you're not sure you're going to make it because of you. You're sure you're going to make it because of whatever, you and a bunch of other stuff.
Well, thank you so much. There was so many pearls of wisdom there, and I look forward to seeing your next chapter.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you.